The Conor McGregor vs Michael Chandler fight news has been looking shaky these last couple of days. Or so I thought until a few hours ago. More on that later. When the Dublin press conference was originally cancelled, I didn't really look much into it. I just thought that they needed to reschedule for some logistical reason, and it wouldn't be that big of a hassle. I was wrong. First of all, the press conference was cancelled the day of, which is absolute bullshit for the fans. People buy tickets to these events and pay travel fees just for the UFC to pull the plug last minute. Conor shared his thoughts about the UFC press conference getting cancelled on Twitter, in which he said that it was due to reasons outside of his control. He also claims that the UFC and him both agreed to cancel the press conference. It's a super vague tweet and doesn't give us much insights behind the scenes. So the press conference in Dublin didn't go ahead. Apparently Michael Chandler never boarded a flight to Ireland, so there must be something more to the story. Along with the press conference drama, the 3 fights on the UFC YouTube page that were added to promote UFC 303 have been deleted. Those are 2 things that strongly imply that the fight itself was off. On top of Michael Chandler not flying to Dublin, he also left his training camp in Florida to move back home to be with his family. This has been getting more and more mysterious, and the most annoying part about the fate of UFC 303 at the moment is nobody is saying anything. Dana White and UFC officials are staying silent. Besides that one tweet, Conor hasn't said anything either. Nobody seems to be talking about why the initial press conference was cancelled and if the fight itself was still on. I understand if things happen behind the scenes and they need to recalibrate or adjust some things, but it's still frustrating. Is Conor McGregor injured? Would that make him pull out of a fight? People have brought up the fact that Conor has never pulled out of a fight in his life and has gone into events injured. Well, people also change, and I can see him having a lingering injury which renders him unable to compete. Who knows though? If Conor is unable to fight for whatever reason, the UFC don't have anyone else that can replace him as a main event. Well, nobody can replace someone like Conor McGregor, but you know what I mean. If Leon Edwards or Bilal get injured, for example, and their fight against each other gets scrapped, they still have a pay-per-view main event worthy fight on UFC 304 in Tom Aspinall vs Curtis Blaydes to replace it with. Not even talking about the sheer star power of Conor for a minute, they have no fights on the UFC 303 card that are worth putting on as the main event. Ian Gary vs MVP is the next biggest one after Conor vs Chandler, in which that fight is a far cry from a pay-per-view level main event. The UFC banked on the draw of Conor McGregor so much for UFC 303 that they didn't stack the rest of the card at all, and they put on fight night level bouts, to be honest. The future is uncertain surrounding Conor McGregor vs Michael Chandler. It is a developing story, but the fact that we aren't sure whether the fight itself is cancelled or not is alarming. That being said, I don't think there is some big juicy reason as to why the press conference was postponed. I mean, it's a fascinating news story, so I get why some people's imaginations have run wild, and with the fallout of UFC 303 and other bits and pieces that have occurred, it does make you wonder what happened. It will be very disappointing if this fight does get delayed any more than it has been. We've been promised McGregor vs Chandler since the Ultimate Fighter season. I wanted to make this video because really nothing has been said since the press conference cancellation. No party wants to speak out, there has been no updates, and the silence is deafening. Okay, it's been about 12 hours after writing the previous segment of the video. I just finished work, I looked on Twitter, and I saw that Ariel Helwani has been giving optimistic news regarding the Conor McGregor fight. It seems like the fight is on, and although we're still left in the dark about what actually happened with the Dublin press conference, all signs point to Conor and Michael Chandler fighting each other on June 29th. You can love or hate Ariel Helwani, but he is a credible source in combat sports, and I trust his word that the main event of UFC 303 is going ahead as planned. Now, as for the circumstances of the press conference, that's still up in the air. And it probably won't be addressed until much later when this story is way behind us. I'm genuinely curious what you guys think on this Conor vs Chandler fight. Is it going to happen? Let me know.